What's up, guys? My name is Misha. I'm a DevOps engineer from the Netherlands, and today I'm going to walk you through my entire Z Shell configuration. So I recently switched back to Z Shell after about 1.5 years of pure Bash, and so far it has been a really nice experience to go back to Z Shell and enjoy some nicer autocompletion and some other features. So I figured I would show you my new configuration. It has changed quite a bit from my previous Bash configuration, so let's dive into it. I'll go to my .files repo, and then I'll open my Z Shell RC and center it for you. So the way I set it up is I have a .files repo, which is open to the public, GitHub .files, let's see, here we go. This is my .files repo. Anybody can see this. And you can check out my configuration in here. It's all open to the public and for your inspiration. And in there I have a setup script which then makes symbolic links on my systems to put my Z Shell RC in the right place, for example. Now, I start my Z Shell RC with the path configuration, and this has evolved a lot over the years. I used to have a pretty ugly setup where I just was appending stuff, and when I would open a new terminal, there will be a lot of duplicate entries. So I have a nice little script here that poops out my path in a nice way with on all the new lines. And as you see here, there are no duplicate entries in my path, and that makes it very easy to debug or to fix things if things are not working, or if a program cannot be found on my system. This is super useful. And this path is actually a script. As you see in the bottom line here, I source my scripts directory from my .files. So if I go to my .files repo and I enter path, then here it is a little script that I stole from RWXrob that really cleans up the path and poops it out in nice new lines. So that's also how I do these kinds of scripts. Like I have many scripts like gendate. These are all scripts. They are all in my scripts repository, which I source and which make them available on my entire system. So we haven't reached the second line yet, and I'm already 3 minutes in. So let's let's get going. So Z Shell handles globbing differently than Bash, so I set that over here. And then here is the path variable that I have. And here I can neatly put in things that I want in my path. And then here it will remove the duplicates and then export the path as I want it to be. So I can very easily add new things to my path and have a clear overview of what's actually being added to it. Next, I have my SSH configuration. After years of a shameful configuration with just a local SSH key without a passphrase, I finally have become a man, and now I have a proper SSH key set up using a Yubikey that I have here, and I'm using the GPG agent to actually handle my SSH now. So if I re-enter my Yubikey here, and if I am in my .files repo, and if I do a git pull, then I'm being prompted for my PIN. This is because the Yubikey is now being activated because that holds my private key. And I enter my PIN. Then it's asking me to touch it. So I touch my Yubikey, and now I'm able to SSH into my Git repo. So my private key is stored on the Yubikey. It requires a PIN, and I need to touch it in order for it to actually give access to the private SSH key that's stored on my Yubikey. So if you need to have my physical Yubikey, you need to know my PIN in order to use my SSH key. I have finally become a man and handling my SSH keys properly. And I'll be creating a video or even a mini course on my whole new OPSEC situation very soon. I'll probably create that on YouTube and not put it in my school community because it's such an important subject. But I finally have a setup that is actually respectable. So in short, I use the GPG agent with a YubiKey, which is completely secure and nobody can ever take my SSH key if they don't have my physical device and my PIN. Next, I have my environment variables. And of course, as a real man, you use Vim. So that's what you also use in the set-ovi in the terminal. This means that I can, when I'm writing something, I can enter VI mode and I can press 0 to go to the beginning of the line, for example. If I have some words, I can enter VI mode and can delete the entire word or go to the end, etc. So you have basically just full Vim key bindings in the terminal. Then next we have the real man's editor settings. So I always open everything in NeoVim. Then the term variable is important for rendering colors and for example, these italic fonts properly when using tmux. So everything you see here is running in tmux sessions. And if I open a new session or a new window over here, you see in the top that new windows are being added. And in order for that to render properly, you need to set this one. So that's how I do it. I have recently switched back to Firefox, and that's what you set here as the default browser when you open applications from the terminal that use a browser. Here are some directory variables that I set. So for example, the Zettelkasten directory, that's the location where all my nodes are. And I use that in different scripts or in Python scripts in order for my system to know where my nodes are, for example. So if there's a CLI I wrote that's called ZK. So if I do ZK new, then I can create a new node in my Zettelkasten directory, which you see down below in the bottom. There it says Zettelkasten 0 inbox hello world. So that's why I set these directory variables, for example. And likewise I can easily enter my iCloud, etc. These are some Go related variables that I have. So when you're developing in Go, it has a very specific way of handling binaries and where it's expecting to find things. And this is the configuration that worked for me. It took me quite a while to figure out. So feel free to steal that if you're getting into Go. Next, we have my history setup. So I have my file in the home directory and I'm keeping 100,000 lines of history. I like to have the ability to search through my history with FCF. So I have a lot of history to search through. And this is actually such a nice option that these little quality of life things that I really lacked in Bash, and I'm not even sure if Bash has this, but I only discovered this when I switched back to Z Shell. So I apologize if Bash also does this, I'm not sure. But the share history is actually so nice. So I can be working in this window here. So let's say echo hello YouTube. There we go. Now if I open a new window, then here my history is actually available here. And with my old configuration, this didn't work. I would need to actually enter I needed to exit the root shell where my tmux was being started from in order for my whole history to be updated. So, this is so nice when I'm working on different projects to have my history shared in real time. A really nice quality of life improvement. I like to remove duplicates when I can. So this is what this does. And sometimes you enter things in the terminal that you don't want to save. So by prepending that with a space, that will not be saved. I actually thought that was a Bash default or even Z Shell default, but apparently you have to configure that. Next, for my prompt. So before in Bash, I was using a script from GitHub to actually update my prompt. And the thing about prompts And actually, my entire philosophy with configuration and the Z shell configuration that I'm now doing is I'm always trying to compress it, make it smaller, make it cleaner, make it as simple as possible. Seriously, as you notice, I'm not using my Z shell either. You don't need all this shit in your terminal. It's only a distraction. It's a waste of time to sit there for hours and hours and hours to get your icons and your colors right. I mean, I'm speaking from experience here. I've made these mistakes. I've spent entire weekends trying to get my prompt just right. And okay, I learned a thing or two about the shell, but in general, it has been a waste of time. What I want in my shell is a clean, minimal prompt, like you see here. You only see a icon that I'm in my home directory, and then you have a prompt icon, and that's it. When I enter a Git repo, all I want to see is whether there are changes that I've made in my current repo. So you'll see here that I have the main, I'm on the main branch, and this indicates that there are some changes here. So if I do git diff, here I see that my font size has changed in my Alacrity because I am recording. And that's all I want in a prompt. Nothing else. And before, I was using this GitHub script to basically do this in my prompt. Then I switched to Starship. Starship is great. Like, let's Starship prompt. Starship is great. It's written in Rust, and it was just one line of configuration, and you have a really nice little prompt, a really nice prompt that can do so much. But again, it can do too much. It's like having an entire tool workshop in your prompt, and you can do so many things, whereas all I need is just my Git, my current directory, and whether I'm on whether I'm in a Git repo, and whether I have changes and which branch I'm on. That's all I want to see. I don't need icons. I don't need to see my Python runtime all the time. So the solution to this is Pure Prompt, which was recommended to me by one of my highly respected mentors. And what I like about Pure Prompt is that it's all shell. It's not Rust or Python or anything. It's just a simple shell script, basically. And that's it. That's it. Super easy, super clean. So I really like my new Z shell prompt. Before I moved to Bash, I had all my Z shell with the power level 10K and all the icons and all of that. Man, what a horrible experience, actually. So this is just so clean, calm, simple, not distracting, and yeah, I highly recommend it. Try it out. So by default, the pure prompt actually starts to pull your every time you are in a Git repo. Well, if you use a Yubikey for your SSH, that leads to problems, because then I would need to touch it all the time, or it would start to prompt me every time for my SSH key, so I have to disable that. And here, my entire configuration is built so it is compatible with multiple systems. So I can actually clone my entire repo on a Mac OS system or my Arch Linux ThinkPad that I have in the living room, and everything should work. Now, on Mac OS, I'm using Brew, and then the completions are stored in a different directory. So that's why I need to source this one, or need to use this variable when I'm on Mac OS, and else I'm using this directory to source my pure prompt. And this is just the auto load for prompt init, and then it just says prompt pure. So the prompt command is actually what is being installed when you use pure prompt. And if I just write the word prompt, here it will show you the options. And if you do prompt P, then you can actually see all of the currently available prompts. These are just all the defaults. but it's actually quite nice that you can just preview them, and it's just such a simple, clean, minimal program. And yeah, I really like it. I really, really like it. So that's how the prompt works. Nice and clean, but the pure prompt is Z shell only as far as I know. Then we have aliases. This is, of course, highly individual, but I like to have 1 or 2 letter shortcuts for my commands, or well, many of my commands, or just 3-letter words that do certain actions or cd into certain directories. So I won't go through all of these because there are quite a lot of them, but you will see that if I write dot, then I enter my dot files repo, and I have some home lab related aliases. This is the command I use most, probably, LA, and it's just ls-lather, and that is a nice way of rendering the ls command. This gives me all the information that I want to see. I used to use exa, which is really nice with all sorts of icons and such, but at some point I was switching systems and I didn't install it, and I figured, well, I can actually manage without. But I still kept the command because it took me quite a while to figure out the proper one that I liked, and I'm just keeping that when I want to return to exa. This is a nice little file that searches recursively and sorts by last modification. That is actually harder than you might think to actually just show you that. And this is just in my .files repo. This is actually showing me all of the stuff that I've been recently changing, except the hidden files. Some tmux and exit aliases, SYU for my Arch Linux. Yeah, GP, git pull, that's one that I use a lot. And of course, I have my Zettelkasten aliases where I can quickly enter my inbox or the Zettelkasten directory. Some kubectl aliases. I like to use the KC to switch my Kubernetes contexts, and the KN for kubeNS. Before you start using these, learn how to do it with kubectl. So let's see, k config set context, and like do it like that first. Know how to switch a namespace before you start using kubectx and kubeNS. But when you have mastered that, then there's no shame in just doing it like this, and then you can actually very nicely switch your context or your namespaces like this. It's super nice. And FluxGet customizations. I use Flux in my home lab, so I often check the customizations when I'm hacking around, so that's a useful alias to have. I have a file with some private things that I don't want in my Z shell RC. That's the disadvantage of having your .dot files available publicly, but there are some things that I sourced that I don't want to have available there. And this configures the FCF configuration and key bindings. And finally, there is completion. So if brew is installed on the system, it looks in this directory. Otherwise, it will just use the zfunc. And in order to install a completion, I have a little example here how I would do that. And that's it. And here we go. That's the end of my Z shell RC. It has shrunk quite substantially over the years. I used to have a lot more configuration, and as I'm mastering the terminal more and more by day, I'm learning that the old acronym, keep it simple, stupid, always applies. And I'm enjoying a lot I'm getting a lot of enjoyment of like compacting things, making things easier to work with, and to keep it as minimal as possible, to limit all the distractions, and to actually use my time where it's actually useful. So that is my current G shell configuration. If you like this, if you want to know more about my stuff, or if you want to ask questions about my stuff, I highly recommend you take a look at my school community, which you can find here. Here we have a very active community of people who are constantly hacking the shell and getting better at Vim, NeoVim, Kubernetes, Linux. It's everything. It's such a great community of great guys. Tons of information in here. And in the classroom, there's also a few courses about this stuff specifically. I have an entire walkthrough of all of my dot files, including my NeoVim and Bash and everything. It's like 2 hours long. And if you enter the community, you can ask me questions directly about my configuration if you get stuck on something. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.